What's up, you guys? It's Sir Scrub here, bringing you some more Scrub Tier Yu-Gi-Oh! And in today's video, I'm going to be bringing to you guys my Zombie World Control combo deck for the May 2020 format, coming at you here with another video for the Coalition of Scrubs. This is a really weird and interesting deck. I tried to create a good mix of combo and control, and I also have really designed this to go second. So it's a really interesting and unique take on a deck for this format that I wanted to bring to you guys and get you guys' conversation started on. So starting off here, we'll start with our 6 copies of Unizombie. Definitely the most important piece of the deck. Because this is your normal summon. This is really what gets your plays off the ground. This is what gets your whole game started. So you want to see it. It's a Foolish Burial. It gives you access to Needle Fiber. It's just a really, really good card, and it kickstarts everything for the deck. Then we have the 3 copies of Unizombie, of Mizuki. Now, this is where I start to showcase what I was talking about, the mix of combo and control, because of the power of some of the newer Link monsters that have been released recently, we can go through 2 to 3 Mizukis in our first turn pretty easily. Our standard combo is generally going to use the first 2 Mizukis in our first turn, so I like to have the third for playing past turn 1, allowing us to get back into the game just in case our board gets broken, or even if pieces of it gets broken, it lets us combo further to reestablish a board going into a grindier game. For our little zombies, we have 2 copies of Glow Up Bloom and 1 copy of Necro World Banshee. Now, these cards are pretty standard. I think the only thing that's really unique about my ratio is the fact that I'm only playing 1 Banshee. Banshee is just an extra copy of Zombie World, and while I like to see it in my hand, you don't want to see 2 copies of Zombie World. So you don't want to see this card and a Zombie World. So this is why I like to just play this as an extra copy of Zombie World that you can have access to off of Unizombie. Glow Up Bloom, on the other hand, is a fantastic extender. It's probably going to be the card you're going to summon off of Needle Fiber most often to kickstart your plays, and of course the monster you're going to be summoning off of that is going to be one of our 2 copies of Doom King Ballardroch. I like to play 2 of this card, even though it can't really summon itself from your hand. Just in case one of them gets banished, because this deck has been around for a while, so people do know how to play against it, and one of the best ways to play against this deck is to simply banish the Ballardroch. So it's really interesting. Well, I wouldn't say it's an interesting card, but it is a fantastic card. It's 2 forms of interruption against your opponent by itself, so it's really good. The other big zombie that we're playing in this deck is 2 copies of Jacobulin. This card is a fantastic extender, and it also has a pretty unique form of interruption. It allows you to snipe your opponent's Alistair out of their graveyard, or their you can take their Eldritch out of the graveyard so they can't recur it. You can take their Block Dragon out of the graveyard so they can't continue to abuse it. It's just a really unique form of interruption against the opponent to take important pieces out of their graveyard and keep it out of their possession. Then we have for the danger monsters, this is another example of the combo side of this deck. This is our gas in our tank, and it's also our biggest consistency boosting. I like seeing the dangers because they're just really free extenders. And Mothman is probably the best one in this particular strategy because it allows you to set your graveyard up guaranteed. Even if you miss and you hit the Mothman when you activate its effect, you can still discard a card, and it still digs you deeper into the deck. Whereas Jackalope and Tsuchinoko, they are guaranteed bodies on board no matter how it plays out. At best, you get to draw 1 card. At worst, you just get a body on board to still be able to make link plays with, so they're really good. You just have to make sure that you activate your dangers before you go into Glow Up Bloom, because if you go into Glow Up Bloom and you activate the danger and you're successful, it won't summon itself, so you won't get the draw. So you just got to make sure that you are aware of that. Then to begin our go second onslaught, like I said, this deck strategy is to go second. I do want to go second, break boards, and Ash Blossom is really good for interrupting just a whole host of decks. Everything from tier 1 decks to tier 3 decks. It's just a really good card. It's good against everything. And then also to help us break boards, we're playing 2 copies of Gamma Seal in the main deck. Kaijus are just momentum stealers. They're a great way to 1-for-1 with the most annoying thing on the field. So like playing against Orcus, they end on the Masquerena with the Dingirsu in the graveyard. This is a great way to 1-for-1 the Masquerena, so you don't have to worry about it interrupting you. It's a great way to 1-for-1 with Eldritch and just all sorts of stuff like that. It's just really good at removing cards, and I've found a lot of success with them online. They've been really, really helpful. That's it for the monsters. Moving into the spell cards, we have the 3 copies of Zombie World. This is the main card of the deck. It's what you really need to get your entire engine going. And it's also a pretty unique little floodgate. Turning cards in the graveyard to zombie monsters can interrupt some deck strategy, like Adamancipator, for example. They can't banish rocks and stuff like that. Or I think, is it Earth? I think it is Earth, so I don't think Zombie World is good against that for that reason. But it does help you against some rogue decks, stuff like that. Then for our Go Second cards, we have 3 copies of Dark Ruler No More. I love this card. This is a really just powerful blowout card. You can't inflict damage the turn you use it, but that doesn't really matter as long as you can break their board and establish control of the game. And just completely turning off all of their effects is really good. Now, this card is not that great against a lot of control style decks, so it is something that I do frequently side in and out depending on the matchup. One of the cards that I do side deck, I don't really side deck in and out of much, is Super Poly. While I don't think this card is, I think I treat it like Dark Ruler No More. It's not as widely applicable as it has been in the past. It's not the guaranteed blowout card that it used to be, which is why I'm only playing it at 2. For example, it's not so great against Eldritch, and if you don't have Zombie World, it's not really so great against Adamancipator, as long as they're being smart and playing around it. So that's why I cut it down to 2. I do frequently side out the Dark Ruler No Mores, but I like to always have access to Super Poly. Another good 2 of in this deck is our 2 copies of Call by the Grave. This is a really fantastic card. It is both proactive and reactive, protecting you from hand traps, but also allowing you to interrupt your opponent's graveyard. Then we have our 2 copies of Cosmic Cyclone. This is for our back row decks. We have a really, really tough matchup with back row decks. Zombies, just as an engine, as a deck, they really struggle against control style decks like that, so I like having the natural out to them. And it's also good for things like Mystic Mine and the Buster Lock and the Infinite Negate Lock and stuff like that. So I think back row removal is just really necessary right now. Plus, there's also Eldritch running around. Ooh, I apologize. Then for our last 2 cards, we have the Monster Reborn and the Foolish Burial. Both of these are pretty natural and obvious inclusions into the deck. They're just free extenders and free setup. That's it for the main deck. Should be an even 40 cards. Moving into the extra deck, now I will say that the extra deck I really haven't as invested into as much. I try to keep my extra deck as budget and as generic as possible. So starting off with our Link 4s, we have the 1 copy of Borlo Dragon and the 1 copy of Topologic Zeraboros. I do not have access to Yugioh, but you certainly could play it in this deck. It is 2 negates, so it is something worth looking into. But I feel like these cards are just fine. I found Zeraboros to be pretty widely applicable. A lot of things want to banish Pot of Desires, Pot of Extravagance. Eldritch banishes a lot of cards. Adamancipator can banish a lot of cards, and this is just a really great way to put a lot of pressure on the board. And Borlo Dragon is just really good for dealing with problem cards and cards that are resistant to destruction. Then for our other Link monsters, we have the 1 copy of Unicorn and the 1 copy of Phoenix. These are really good for the grind game. They help you out with your plays a whole lot. Well, they don't help you out with your plays, but they do help you break boards and go into the mid game. Then what really does help you out with your plays is the 1 copy of Needle Union Carrier, the 1 copy of Halka Fibrax, and the 1 copy of Vampire Sucker. These 3 cards are the lifeblood of the deck. Halka Fibrax is going to be the card that you summon first in your combos because it establishes your Glow Up Bloom. And then Union Carrier gets you an extra Mizuki into the graveyard so you can maximize the draws off of your Vampire Sucker and try and maximize as many disruptions on board. Plus, with Zombie World on the field, you can revive the Halka Fibrax, and you can make sure that you can summon the Synchro Tuner we have in the extra deck. Then for our final Link 2, we have the 1 copy of IP Masquerena. I don't find myself really making this till like turns 2 or 3, just because turn 1, I really haven't found the combo to have the resources to do it. Plus, once you get locked into zombies, you really can't summon this card. But if you do have to make it, it is a good turn 1 play if you have a suboptimal hand, and it's really good on your second turn. And then our last Link monster is 1 copy of Relinquished Anima. Sometimes you really just got to get Glow Up Bloom off the field, and if you don't have any other way to do it, you can always just link it off for Anima, so it makes it to where your Bloom is never really dead on the field. For super poly targets, we're playing 2 copies of Drago Necro Nether Soul Dragon. Now, I like this card. It's really fantastic. It's really strong. It's just sucking up any 2 monsters, allowing us to interrupt our opponent in that way. And the only really thing that I would say about it, other than the fact that it's just a really big beater, is the fact I probably would cut 1 for a Mud Dragon in the Swamp if you have access to it. It's sometimes you don't have access to Zombie World when you do have Super Poly, so it can be a little bricky in that way. But we do also have 1 copy of Starving Venom to fall back on. It's not as widely applicable as it used to be in like Orchest format, but it's definitely something you want to have access to. For the Synchro monsters, we have the 1 copy of Shooting Riser Dragon as our Needle Fiber summon. This card is a Foolish Burial, so it allows you to get that 3rd Mizuki into the graveyard, setting up your plays for your 2nd turn. So it's also an extra body on board. You can use it for Synchro plays when you dump it. So there's also that. Sometimes you do want to summon your Draco Berserker the Tinny off of it. This is your budget copy of Warlord Savage Dragon. Sometimes I do hard make this card, but not really. It really just depends. It just depends on the hand. And the last card in the deck is the 1 copy of Lancelot, Dark Knight of the Underworld. Lancelot's an Omni Negate, so if you do happen to get the Draco Berserker of the Tinny on the field and say it eats an Impermanence or something like that on your turn, or if you just want to have a way to Synchro into an 8 to go into this, it's something I would definitely suggest, because you can discard, attach Ballardrotch to it and then use it for the negate, and it still recurs back, so you don't lose as much advantage. Then I'm just going to run over some quick side deck options first. My backup hand trap is 3 copies of DD Crow. This card's really good for this format. It's a really graveyard heavy format, so having Crow around is definitely something I would say you want to have access to. Then we're playing 3 copies of Lancia. In the same vein, a lot of decks like to banish cards, this deck included, so it's really good for like the mirror match. You can set up all your plays and use Lancia to lock them out of being able to banish their cards. But it's also good against Adamantipator, it's good against Eldritch, it's good against a lot of rogue decks. Anything running Invoked, Lancia is pretty good against. And then the rest of the side deck is really dedicated to the larger artifact package for when we're forced to go first. So we're playing the 1 Scythe, the 3 Sanctums, and the 2 Trap Tricks. This is just something to where once your opponent has caught on to your strategy goings into games 2 and 3, you can side this engine in to give you some extra power and maybe take out some of your go second cards like the Kaijus and the Dark Ruler No More. And it also makes it easier to side deck Lancia because your Sanctums are really never dead at that point. And then our final side deck slot is going to go to 3 copies of D-Barrier. I feel like this card can be a really powerful blowout card coming out of the side deck because a lot of decks don't really prepare for it. And you can shut off a really necessary mechanic for some decks, and I think it's a really high impact card. And it's also a trap trick target, so there's that. But that's all I've got for this video, you guys. If you did enjoy this video, please be sure to leave a like and subscribe, and let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. Be sure to check out the description with links to all the different members of the Coalition of Scrubs. Be sure to check out their channels. They definitely deserve your support. They're all fantastic guys. But most importantly, don't forget, be a scrub. Peace.
We don't play good decks, we play bad decks well. Scrubs by choice, in this abyss we dwell.